So thank you so much for joining us today, and we're looking forward to having you tell us all about your journey. To get started, did you want to just introduce yourself as well as what Mailchimp does?
Sure, yeah. My name is Conrad. I'm a security operations engineer at Mailchimp. And for anybody who doesn't know, Mailchimp is a marketing automation platform for small business. We started with a lot of email products, but have gone into multi-channel avenues as well. So
that's great.
Yeah.
We're really excited to get started. So the theme that Ivan left us on was automation. And if we think about automation, then something that's really important is how do you get there using some of these products. So what was that journey like for you?
Automation was obviously like the biggest factor or value add for us at Mailchimp. How we had managed keys before and access to our infrastructure was primarily through Puppet and configuration management. Having developers create keys on their laptops and manually create a PR and add that to our configuration management. Anytime we had to onboard somebody, it was a whole thing, like big old page in the wiki on how to do it. And so bringing in ScaleFT completely removes or bringing in advanced server access completely removes, it completely removes that process, and it's a lot more streamlined. And Mailchimp serves its core traffic out of over 2,000 servers and 3 data centers. So anything we can do to increase that automation is a big add for us.
That's great.
Yeah.
So with automation, was that something you were able to use for both your end users and administrators there?
Yeah, absolutely. With advanced server access, we had, onboarding was a lot easier, not only for the end users, but also for our admins, and also offboarding as well. If somebody left the company, there was no longer a ticket that had to be created or anything like that. It was very seamless.
Yeah. So by using Okta and advanced server access, not only are you getting the features that Ivan just talked to us about, but we want to make that journey seamless. With everything that you do with Okta, extend that to everything that you do with your on-premise infrastructure. That brings us to, how did you manage access before you started using server access, and was that easy to do?
So we, like I mentioned before, we use Puppet for all of our configuration management, and so we did the traditional thing with static keys. Every developer would create one on their own laptop and store it on their own laptop. And we would give them instructions on how best to protect that key, but there's always some kind of trust there with the developer. And accidents happen, and having so many static keys existing for a long period of time is obviously a risk. When we were looking at improving that process, we were thinking, what's a better way we can do this? And obviously certificate authentication is not only easier for our developers, for our sysadmins, but I think it's also probably more secure as well.
Yeah. So by using certificates, these certificates are not just about making the end user experience easy, but this manages security and usability. So it's tightly scoped to say who the user is, what server you're accessing at that time, really going back to that zero trust model of always being able to verify not just who you are, but who you need to be in this moment while accessing these resources. And we're glad you were able to use that.
Absolutely.
So you've been using Okta for a while, and that's a different model when we think about kind of shared accounts and things. Have you been able to kind of solve some of those use cases with shared accounts?
Yeah, absolutely. We try and have as many individual accounts as possible and remove shared accounts where we can, but obviously some still have to exist. And being able to tie into Okta is a huge way for us to move further in that direction, and make sure that everybody has their own identity when they're performing actions on a server, so that we can have a correct audit record of what they did and where, and make sure that not only we have accountability for what's happening, but also that we are not sharing credentials and keeping those as tight as possible.
Yeah. And with using server access, the other thing you get is also we have some built-in capabilities around service accounts as well. outside of typical logins, and those can be integrated seamlessly. So I know shared accounts sometimes are a lot more than service accounts, but we are trying our best to solve those use cases across the board.
Yep.
So before we started using advanced server access or being able to log in, you must have had some kind of directories to log in. How has that change been?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we try and limit AD or LDAP as much as possible, and luckily we had a pretty good methodology with creating local accounts through our Puppet configuration management. And so bringing in ScaleFT and creating those local accounts worked seamlessly with our existing tools, worked very well with all of the existing infrastructure that we already had. And before we were introduced to advanced server access, I was looking at different ways that we could do this problem, or to tackle this problem. And one of the things we were looking at was like free IPA and some that just like wasn't a value add for us. Having to manage all those directories and manage LDAP like that, it wasn't what we wanted to do. And honestly, like, it was just a big risk for us as well. Like, if that's just like a huge target for those like servers on our network. So we keep it simple with local accounts, and it's worked really well for us.
Yeah, we're glad. With local accounts, one thing that Ivan mentioned was we want to take the Okta products to advanced server access. So if we take a simple example of what Okta does with lifecycle management today, that shouldn't stop at cloud apps, and we want to take that to your on-premise infrastructure. So this means being able to say, based on what you've done in your source of truth, be it AD or your HR source or anything in Okta, based on where they are, those RBAC permissions will translate into, if a user moves groups, that will resonate all the way down to your servers. If a user leaves the company, that's instant as well. Really making sure it's not just secure, but you're also reducing a lot of admin overhead there. So you've been using Okta for some of these processes, but before, with servers, even while using Okta, you still needed to do a lot of checkout processes. So do users like the way that they do it now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we were first presenting this to the team, I think a lot of people were hesitant. The keys were something they were very familiar with. They could touch them. But our IT department had done a really great job of bringing Okta to some of our other applications at the company. And so bringing this interface to infrastructure access just made a lot of sense. And now that our developers and our engineers have seen it, it translates really well, and everybody gets it. You come to recognize Okta as being your authentication, and translating that into infrastructure access is great and seamless.
Yeah, they're one place to go.
Exactly.
Great. So I think PAM is something we all talk about, right? Privileged access, where users need to be. But how do you define how that works? How are we able to help you with who a user should be outside of just logging in?
Yeah, so advanced server access brings us great kind of knobs to tweak when we want to create different roles for our users. Before, in our configuration management, we started kind of those patterns when we were a very small company. And as we're over 1,000 people now at Mailchimp, and so obviously that we needed to scale those processes. And so advanced server access brings us new opportunity to give the right role and the right access to the right developers. As we specialize more in the engineering departments, there's more need to give role-based access.
Yeah. So with role-based access, not only kind of the demo you saw, somebody had user access, somebody had admin access. This is a huge area for us, and as we kind of develop the product, we want to make these permissions so granular that you're able to manage who a user should be on all these servers from this one dashboard. So we're just getting started there. A lot of times when we're setting up Linux servers, and access is great, but we have to have jump servers or bastion architectures. Is that something you have in your environment you're looking to use?
Yeah, well, so currently we use a traditional VPN to manage our access to our servers, and it's all IP, whitelist based. And we're a growing company, and we're adding offices. So one of the problems that we see with VPN is whenever we need to go add new networking equipment or even open a new office, that's a lot of overhead that we need to do to then go configure the VPN and then configure accesses based on those new IPs. With removing that piece, I no longer have to worry about IP or like a firewall rule misconfiguration or any IP-based configuration like that. So.
Yeah, making it easier for your users.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's and honestly, like, it keeps it a lot simpler, and that access point is grouped into advanced server access and that infrastructure, and it makes a lot more sense. And when you think about the architecture.
Yeah. So we want to enable you to use the architectures that you want to use and not force any kind of architecture that we need for this product to work. So one thing that you get with using Bastions is we natively support the ability to translate that kind of authentication. So if your user is trying to log in, they can directly try to access the server that they need to reach, but that may be behind a Bastion architecture, and we can translate that seamlessly within advanced server access. So we hear about session recordings a lot. Is that the way that you keep track of what's happening, or what's the best way for you to see what's going on with your users?
Yeah, so how we have it currently is, we have a bunch of audit D logs that come into our Elk stack, and it's kind of how we parse through what's happening with our servers. But audit D logs are not the easiest thing to read, and they can get pretty messy. And it's more or less a fire hose when it comes to audit D logs. So having the events page, it's easily human readable, it's clear, and it's given us a lot more insight into kind of what's happening, and not only what's happening on the servers, but also we can see the endpoints that our users are connecting to our infrastructure with as well.
Absolutely. So with a lot of you use Okta today, so as you know, the syslog populates everything that's happening with the user. This extends to what's happening in server access as well, which comes down to who the user is, what they're trying to access, what credential was minted to them. That's all being logged, and we want that to be presented in the way that you need. So thank you for sharing that with us. And with that, quickly, we hope that was a good journey for you to see how a user goes from using everything they see in Okta, really identifying who they are with Okta's adaptive policies, transforming that to not just your cloud apps, but your on-prem apps. And we'd like to thank you for being here with us today and also being a customer who's always helping us out.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.